Hey everybody, it's Zach from Myshire Farm, and we're back again with another video to help you on your journey with Coturnix quail and becoming more self-sufficient. In this video, we're actually going to talk about the top 5 questions that I've been getting recently, and I think that this will help a lot of people on their journey with Coturnix quail. I hope that it does. If it does help you, hit the like button, support the channel. Hopefully a lot of people are having these questions. Maybe you are as well, and hopefully this will help you. So here's the top 5. I'll say them, and then if you're not interested, you don't have to watch anymore. And if you are, then hopefully you'll learn something. But number 1 is how many days of our incubation, and then when do you move to lockdown? Number 2 is when are eggs fertile and when are eggs not fertile? Number 3 is what are the best quail for starting out? Number 4 is, do quail need medicated feed? And can I butcher unmedicated feed? And number 5, can I or do I need to use grit or supplements or oyster shells or this, that, and the other? And so we're going to just give a quick answer to all 5 of those. If you're interested, here we go. So number 1, days of incubation. With all these answers, I just want you to be aware that there's many different ways to raise quail. And so a little different is not going to hurt anything. So you do it your way. But let me tell you how we do it. So we put our eggs in the incubator every Friday at about 2 or 2:30, whenever George is getting off work that day. And so when we put them in, we consider that to be day 0 because they're going in midday, right? So we're just giving them that little extra time to start. And then the next day is day 1. So if you're putting them in at, 7, 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, that can be your day 1. If you're putting them in at 10, 11 o'clock at night, just day 0. So if it's a half a day or earlier, count it as day 1. If it's a half a day or later, count it as day 0, is the way we do it here. And if you do anything differently on anything I say, I'd love to know in the comments. I'd love for other people to see how other people do it in the comments, so they can find out what works best for them. Probably should have mentioned that. Probably should mention that every Sunday and Monday I go live right here on our YouTube channel as well for questions and answers. So if you're interested in that, and if you have questions, we'd love to have you. Now you can comment below and I'd love to answer your questions there as well. But every Sunday and Monday we go live to answer your specific questions right there on the spot. So we'd love to see you there as well. So that was number 1. Number 2 are when are eggs fertile and when are they not? So the long story short on this one, I promise, is between day 1 and day 7 of them laying the eggs for we'll say experienced layers, right, that have been laying for a while. There's really no effect in fertility. At day 7, it does start affecting fertility, but not very much. I mean, we're talking 5 to 7%. So not very much until day 10. After day 10, it does start deteriorating after that. Best practice is if you're holding your own eggs, then let them sit for 7 days, collect them all, and then put them all in on day 7. That's what we do here, and it works for us. It doesn't really change the fertility or the hatch rate at all. If you wait for 10 days, you're gonna have a little bit less fertility, but again, not very much. You're talking, 5%. Now, if they're new eggs, if they're new layers, if they just started laying the eggs, when can you start using them? Well, the answer is really whenever you want. Now, you're going to get a very, very low to almost 0% fertility rate on the first probably 3 days. It's going to take a couple of days. After that, it's going to be low. So let me tell you the best practice. The best practice is let them lay for 7 days, collect those, eat them, do whatever you want with them. After 7 days, then you're off to the races, you're good to go, because the males will become sexually active way before the females start laying eggs usually. So the males are already doing the job. It's going to take a couple of days for it to stick and for it to stay. But with that being said, The first week, we usually just use them for eating eggs or a corporate account. And then after that, we put them in for us, we test it, and then we're off to the races on that. So that's the best practice, but really you could start early. If you've got the room, there's no reason not to try. But I mean, you can eat them as well. So that's kind of that question. Number 3 is, what is the best quail to start out with? Now, a lot of people want to start out with the largest quail, which is the jumbo wild. And in my opinion, the jumbo wild will always be the largest quail. That's the staple. That's the foundation, right? But with that, you know, our jumbos average about 12 ounces at 8 weeks old, about 14 ounces at 10 weeks old. It's fairly large concern. I mean, when you're talking about Coturnix quail, the standards are anywhere from, 9 to, 10 and a half ounces. And then we've got other jumbos that are anywhere from 10 and a half to 13 ounces. So remember, we're talking about ounces here, right? So if size is most important to you, then you want to get something that is a large size, which would be a jumbo. Now, with that being said, the best to start with is something that would be feather sexable, in my opinion. So you can look at them and you can tell by the chest, which we have videos on how to feather sex. But you can look at them and tell by their chest at 3 to 4 weeks old whether they're male or female. To me, that's a lot easier to start off with than something that you have to vent sex, such as Tibetans or Rosettas. Now, Tibetans and Rosettas are the best layers, but you do have to vent sex those. And for someone starting out, it can get a little frustrating, especially starting out. But I mean, you're going to learn anyway, and it's not that difficult. And we've got videos on it too. So I guess what I'm trying to say is just go with what you want. They all have pretty much the same temperament. They all do fine in hot and cold weather. The temperature really doesn't affect any of the quail. It's more of the elements, so rain, snow, sleet, wind, things like that. But as far as the weather goes, as far as the temperature goes, all of them are pretty much the same. They're all pretty much docile. I mean, you'll get that jerk there every once in a while, but other than that, they do fine, and all of them do about the same. And they all get along. We've got mixed cages that have all the different colors in it, and they do just as fine as the other colors that are separated and confined together. So it really doesn't matter. I would recommend something that's feather sexable. Obviously, if you want the largest, you're going to go with something that's jumbo, but the benefit of a standard, no matter what color it is they're going to lay more than the jumbos. So for example, I should have written it down and I didn't, but I do have a playlist. It's called All About the Colors, and each one of those will share with you how many eggs they lay, each color, how many eggs they lay in a year, how long they lay, all kinds of stuff. How to sex them, what they look like, the differences, things like that, how to get the color. I have a playlist on that you can check out. So I don't know if these numbers are actually accurate, but these are just rough estimates because I forgot to write it down. So for example, the jumbo wild is going to be the largest of the largest, and they will lay maybe 270 eggs a year, whereas the Rosettas will be, they're probably around 9.5 ounces. But they lay somewhere around like 320 eggs a year. So you're going to get a lot more production out of that smaller quail. And again, we're talking about 4 ounces, 3.5 ounces. So it just depends on what's important to you. And I don't think there's a wrong answer. I think that you do what you want to do. So hopefully that helps. And again, if you have questions, feel free to ask in the comments. Next question is, do quail need medicated feed? No, they do not. We have fed them medicated feed and we have fed them non-medicated feed. Nowadays, what we use with our local feed store is actually a medicated feed for pheasants. It's a pheasant starter for the grow-outs and the chicks. And it is a medicated feed, but it is a natural medicated feed. The one thing you want to know about that is that there is a natural and then there's a chemical medication for the feed. If it's a natural, then you're good to go, no worries at all. If it's a chemical medicated feed, then technically they need to be off of that feed for at least 2 weeks before you butcher. On the on the natural medicated, then you don't have to worry about it at all. Now, once we take them off the grow out and we move them onto the layer feed, that is not medicated at all. So it really doesn't matter. The only reason we're doing the medicated feed is because it had everything that we needed in it. It's natural, and it was the better price than the unmedicated. Other than, I mean, the cheapest was the chemical medicated, and we weren't willing to do that. But for some reason, the natural medication was cheaper than just no medication at all. I don't really know how that works, but whatever. So it doesn't really matter. Now, that actually goes into our last question, and that is, can I or do I need to use grit or supplements or anything like that? So I'm going to go very quickly into some of those. And long story short, the answer is no. Also, kind of depends on what you're feeding them. So we've got a feed video. If you type in the search bar on YouTube, feed by Myshire Farm, there's going to be a video that comes up. And we're going to go into how we customized our own feed, what the percentages are, what the ingredients are, all that jazz. And then you can kind of decide what works best for you. But with that being said, they don't need a lot of stuff. They're pretty resilient, and they'll pretty much eat anything, and they're still very productive. So when we started out, we used a turkey starter, and then we moved over to a general, all flock layer feed, and they did just fine. Now we get the best maximum production out of what we use now, but it's not like they were doing bad on that. The recommendations I can give you is I definitely recommend a crumble. The adults can use a pellet, and then the mesh works, but the crumble, in my opinion, is the best practice. That's what we use. We've tried them all, and that's what seems to work best. Now, can you give them supplements? Yeah, absolutely. If you want to give them oyster shells to bump up the calcium, or if you want to give them mealworms to bump up the protein, or whatever the case may be, go ahead. If you want to use fodder, if you want to use fermented feed, if you want to use, game bird feed or turkey starter or, chicken layer feed, whatever the case may be, you can use whatever you want. They're really not picky. But I see a lot of people really overthinking that. So if you have chickens, then just give them the chicken feed after they're starting to lay, and they'll do just fine. I do recommend that it's a high protein for the starter grower, between 25 and 30%. And if you have specific questions about the feed, because I'm not going into all of it because I'm trying to go as fast as possible. It's already almost 13 minutes long. But please watch that video, Feed by Myshire Farm. Type that in the YouTube search bar. That'll show up. It's a picture of I believe a Klombach bag, and that'll give you much better information because I had just gotten the information from a very reliable source. So I would watch that. But long story short is, don't overthink that. They're fine on whatever you want to give them. What we use, we think creates the best production for us. And so that's why we use it. But again, we're talking about very little. But with how many quail we have and how many eggs we get a day, any production increase we can get matters a lot. So really, that's the top 5 questions I've been getting lately. Hopefully that helped you out as well. Remember, we'd love to see you on the live shows. And if you have any questions, comment below or join us on the live. We'd be happy to help you out. And as always, until next time, everybody, stay safe. Thanks.